My name is Jonathan Pierce, and I am a detective. Most cases I investigate begin with reports, files, or a call. This one began with silence. A family of hikers never returned from a weekend trip in the national park. When I arrived at the trailhead, the forest was quiet, too quiet. The wind moved through the trees without sound. Birds did not call. The air smelled damp, like wet earth and pine. I followed the path into the dense forest. Twisted roots caught my boots. Branches scratched my arms. Every step forward felt heavier than the last. After several hours, I found the campsite. It was as if nothing had happened. The tents were still set up. Sleeping bags neatly folded. A small fire burned steadily in the pit. Ash and embers glowed softly, although no one was tending it. A cooler sat at the edge of the campsite. Its lid closed. Inside, food remained cold, untouched. Water bottles full. Everything ordinary. Yet the campers were nowhere to be found. I walked through the camp slowly. Footprints in the dirt led nowhere. They ended at the edge of the clearing, disappearing into the forest as though the earth had swallowed them. The smell of damp pine filled my nose, but there was something else too, faint, metallic, almost like iron, lingering at the edge of perception. I called out their names. No reply. No rustle of leaves. Only the wind whispering between the trees. I examined the fire. The flames flickered strangely. They were steady, yet they seemed alive. Shadows danced along the tents and trees in ways that did not match the light. I checked my watch. Time seemed normal. But a creeping sense told me that the forest was no longer bound by ordinary rules. Each tree looked similar. Every path seemed familiar, though I had never walked it. And the farther I moved, the more the forest felt like it was watching. I circled the campsite. Nothing changed. Nothing moved. And yet there was movement. Shadows flickering just beyond my vision. The sound of branches snapping somewhere far behind. Not in the wind. Something alive. I stepped back toward the tents. The fire continued to burn. I realized that it had been burning the entire time. No smoke rose. No heat radiated. The forest was silent again. Too silent. And I understood then that I had stepped into something that wasn't meant to be explained by ordinary reasoning. I left the campsite, moving carefully along the narrow trail that disappeared into the dense forest. The trees grew taller, their branches interlacing above, forming a shadowed canopy that blocked out the moonlight. Every sound seemed amplified: the snapping of a twig, the rustle of leaves, the distant cry of an animal I could not identify. The deeper I went, the more the forest felt alive. Not with wildlife, but with intention. Every tree seemed to lean slightly toward me. Every shadow shifted just beyond my vision. I could not shake the feeling that I was being observed. I found footprints. Not fresh, yet not old. Deep impressions in the damp soil. They were human, but the spacing was irregular, as if whoever walked had moved with hesitation or fear. I followed them carefully, noticing that they occasionally led to a patch of moss, only to disappear entirely. The forest floor was littered with small objects. A torn map pinned under a rock. A flashlight, still functional but smeared with dirt. A water bottle, empty but not weathered. Each item seemed deliberately placed, yet out of context. Hours passed. The sun had long set. The forest grew colder, but not just with night air. A chill settled into my bones, a sense of anticipation, as if something was waiting for me to make a mistake. Then I heard it, faint, soft, deliberate. A whistle? Or a human voice carried through the trees? I stopped, straining to hear. The sound did not repeat. It did not come from a direction I could identify. I moved cautiously, feeling the trail beneath my boots. The footprints reappeared intermittently, always leading deeper into the forest. Every step brought a rising sense of unease. Something was here, something patient, watching unseen. Eventually, I reached a clearing. It was small, circular, surrounded by dense undergrowth. The fire from the campsite flickered in my memory, and I realized the clearing had no natural light. Yet there was a subtle glow here, as if the forest itself exhaled faint luminescence through the fog. On the ground lay scattered items, personal belongings of the hikers. A backpack ripped open. Clothes folded strangely. A notebook, pages empty, except for faint smudges. I noticed a pattern in the placement. It was deliberate. Almost ritualistic. Not supernatural, not mystical, but carefully controlled. Someone or something had orchestrated it. The sense of being watched intensified. I turned slowly, scanning the dense trees. Nothing moved. No sound. And yet, the shadows seemed to shift whenever I looked away. I realized then that leaving the campsite had not brought me closer to the hikers. It had brought me into something much larger. A human design, hidden in the forest, calculated, patient, and perfectly concealed. And the realization struck me harder than fear. The forest itself was only a stage. The actors, missing hikers. And I had become part of the performance. I moved deeper into the forest, following the irregular footprints and scattered belongings, each step weighed down by the knowledge that someone had been here before me, watching, waiting, and orchestrating everything with deliberate care. The canopy above thickened, cutting off all moonlight, and the fog that had been gentle at the campsite now clung to my clothes, damp and chilling. I came across a small clearing. Branches had been snapped and laid across the ground, forming crude barricades, and the signs of struggle were clear. Footprints mingled with scuff marks, disturbed earth, and tufts of clothing caught on jagged branches. It was evident that whoever had taken the hikers had moved methodically, hiding evidence, manipulating the terrain, and leaving behind just enough clues for someone like me to follow, but never enough to understand the full picture. As I advanced, I discovered items that clearly belonged to the missing hikers. A flashlight smashed against a tree, its glass fractured but the battery still alive. A torn map pinned under a rock, with notes in handwriting that did not match any of the hikers. A water bottle, tipped over but not emptied, lying beside a small patch of disturbed dirt. Each object was deliberate, a breadcrumb meant to be found but also to unsettle, to create the illusion of human error while hiding a precise pattern. The deeper I went, the more I understood that this was not random. No mystical force. No ghosts or spirits. Only a human mind, meticulous, patient, and cruel. Someone had lured the hikers here and orchestrated every step, every disappearance, every clue to make it seem impossible to solve. And I, following their trail, was walking exactly where they wanted me. I reached a larger clearing, almost perfectly circular, surrounded by dense undergrowth that seemed to close in like walls. The ground was trampled, but no footprints led away from the center. In the middle lay a backpack, unzipped, its contents arranged carefully, clothes folded, water bottles aligned, a notebook placed neatly on top. It was as if someone wanted the items to be discovered, to send a message. I am here. I am in control. You are part of this now. I felt a cold hand grip my spine, not literally, but through the realization of how precise and deliberate everything was. The forest was not alive. The missing hikers were not gone by chance. I was witnessing the aftermath of a mind that treated people like chess pieces, and I was the next piece to be moved. I turned slowly, scanning the dense trees that enclosed the clearing. Shadows stretched unnaturally, not because of light, but because of perspective and the careful arrangement of obstacles. A faint sound reached me, the crack of a branch far off, deliberate, controlled, like a warning. I understood then that I was no longer just investigating a missing persons case. I was being hunted. Every step I took, every glance I made, was being monitored. And the forest, while silent, was only the stage for someone very human, and very dangerous. I moved cautiously through the forest, following the faint trail that twisted between trees like a living maze, each step bringing the echo of snapped twigs and the occasional rustle of leaves, though no animal appeared. The fog clung thicker now, settling into every crease of the terrain, muffling sound, and making the forest feel claustrophobic, as if the trees themselves leaned in to watch my progress. Eventually, I found signs of a hidden camp. A small clearing, almost perfectly concealed by dense undergrowth, with ground disturbed in precise patterns. A tarp, partially camouflaged, stretched over a rudimentary frame. Beneath it, signs of recent activity, footprints, a fire pit still warm, and scattered belongings that belonged unmistakably to the missing hikers. I approached carefully, examining the items. A jacket draped over a branch, its sleeves folded neatly. A notebook, pages filled with sketches and notes in careful handwriting, not belonging to any of the hikers. A water bottle placed upright, as if waiting for someone to drink from it. The precision was deliberate, almost ritualistic, but entirely human. Someone had constructed this scene, not for survival, but as a display of control. I realized the hikers were not merely missing. They were being held, herded, or manipulated by a mind patient and calculated, someone who had studied the forest, the terrain, and the behavior of their prey. Every breadcrumb, every misplaced object, every subtle clue was a signal, and I was now part of the pattern. Moving around the perimeter of the hidden camp, I noticed traps. Not supernatural, not magical, but ordinary mechanisms made deadly by design. Tripwires stretched between trees, sharpened stakes concealed in foliage, and crude but effective snares intended to immobilize anyone who strayed too close. It became clear that whoever had taken the hikers was prepared to defend this location, and that discovery could mean the end for anyone who entered unprepared. I felt a creeping awareness that I was being watched. Shadows shifted unnaturally between the trees. The slightest sound, a crack of a branch, a rustle of leaves, seemed amplified, signaling attention. This was no random disappearance. This was a calculated capture, a human predator manipulating the environment with precision. I paused near the fire pit. The embers glowed faintly, casting long shadows on the trees. I saw movement in my peripheral vision, subtle, almost imperceptible, but deliberate. Someone or something was observing me. I could not see them, but I knew they were close. They had studied me, anticipated my steps, and designed the camp to lure me in. And then I understood the cruelest truth. The hikers were not gone because of luck, misfortune, or nature. They were trapped by someone clever, patient, and methodical. And I had entered their territory alone. The forest felt alive with intent, though no magic existed. It was a maze of observation, control, and threat, entirely human, entirely real. And I realized with a chill that escape would not be easy. Every step forward was a step deeper into a mind far more dangerous than I had imagined. I edged closer to the center of the hidden camp, keeping low and silent, every sense stretched taut like a wire. The forest no longer felt passive, it seemed to pulse with calculated intent, each branch, each shadow, a tool in someone else's design. I could see the belongings of the hikers, arranged neatly as if someone had set a stage, and the realization hit me with cold clarity. This was not a chaotic scene, it was a performance. Suddenly, movement. A figure emerged from behind the undergrowth, tall, deliberate, entirely human. No disguise, no supernatural presence. Just a person who had spent days, weeks, months studying, planning, and manipulating. Their eyes met mine. Sharp. Focused. Calculating. I raised my hand slowly. Not to attack, but to signal caution. The figure stepped forward, calm, unhurried. They spoke softly, barely above a whisper. "You found us." "Not many do." The voice carried no fear, no anger. Only control. Only precision. I realized immediately that every trail, every clue I had followed, had been left intentionally for someone like me, a detective with persistence, curiosity, and an unwillingness to leave mysteries unsolved. I studied the figure. Everything about their posture, every deliberate movement, screamed planning and patience. This person had hunted the hikers like prey, used the forest as a labyrinth, and turned isolation into a weapon. The missing people were alive, but only as part of the orchestrated environment, objects in someone else's game. I needed to act, but the forest offered no cover, no escape. Every step I took had been anticipated. The figure moved like a shadow in perfect synchrony with me, hurting me subtly, guiding me deeper into the camp without apparent effort. And then I noticed the traps, not activated yet, but ready. Tripwires, snares, sharpened stakes, all set with meticulous care to stop anyone from intervening. I realized that brute force would not work. Escape would require understanding, strategy, and calm. I observed the arrangement of the belongings, the patterns of movement, the spacing between the traps, and the timing of the figure's steps. It was like solving a puzzle in real time. One misstep and the consequences would be fatal. Hours passed, though it could have been minutes. The figure never left the shadows, always aware of my position, always anticipating my moves. I used the forest itself as an ally, ducking behind trees, using low terrain, forcing the figure to follow predictable paths. I reached a small opening at the edge of the hidden camp, where the undergrowth thinned and moonlight touched the forest floor. It was my chance. I sprinted. Branches lashed my face. Roots tangled my boots. The figure followed, calculated, precise, but forced to reveal themselves in the open. I could hear the hikers, muffled voices, footsteps echoing behind the trees, alive, but constrained by the trap of this methodical mind. I reached the trailhead. The forest opened. The moonlight illuminated the path. Behind me, the figure paused at the edge of the clearing, watching. They did not pursue. They allowed me to leave, this time. I turned back briefly. The hidden camp vanished among the trees, almost swallowed by the forest, as if it had never existed. The hikers emerged slowly, dazed but unharmed, their eyes wide with fear and confusion. I understood something as I escorted them to safety. The forest itself had not been dangerous. The danger had been entirely human, patient, and deliberate. And the mind behind it would wait again, somewhere else, testing, observing, controlling. I walked away from the forest, carrying the hikers with me. The chill of the night lingered in my bones, the memory of the traps, the shadows, and the methodical figure burning in my mind. This case was solved, but the memory of calculated human cruelty, precise, patient, inescapable, would haunt me forever.